Yo, hello. If you didn't know, the 2.1 live stream, this happened today. And I do apologize immediately that this is going to be a little bit of a scuffed recording because I really wasn't in a setting that I could record quite easily today, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best. But essentially, Acheron is a very unique Lightning Nihilty character that basically this plays a unique mechanic to the game. With her technique, you have stuff like you can instantly kill enemies, and that's pretty cool for mobs. But for her actual kit in general, Acheron does not use ultimates in a normal way, as Acheron, as you can see there, has a different marker, instead relies on her buffs. And you get these stacks by having other characters apply debuffs. As you can see here, Pela ultimate provides defense down, and then Pela, after this use, you can look at the bottom left corner, and it will go from 7 to 8 stacks on Acheron. And what this means is Acheron essentially wants a very unique style of team, and relies insanely so on getting as many debuffs applied as possible so you can get the big hit of your ultimate. And this kind of mandates running characters like Silverwolf, mandates running characters like Pela, Black Swan, Guinaifen could be a very interesting character there as well. And we'll talk about more concepts on that in the little section we'll do on like team building in general. But once you hit the 9 stacks, you will reach this ultimate from Acheron, and this ultimate works kind of uniquely as well, as essentially you'll have 3 single target hits. You have 3 single target hits. Yeah, they're talking about another thing here. If other enemies explode and apply debuffs, then you'll get a debuff stack as well. But on the ultimate, Acheron has these 3 hits. These 3 hits. One single target hit, 2 single target hit, and the 3rd single target hit. And they each apply stacks of flowers. And these stacks will burst and apply more damage. And then with the final hit, it's an AoE that will just completely destroy an enemy and do a lot of damage, and has this nothing to do with energy. And once you use that, you'll go down to the low end and then have to reapply Nihilty debuffs to get Acheron's ultimate back up, making Acheron very unique, as you essentially energy regen like King Yun does not matter, energy regen ropes don't matter. So Acheron, this becomes this very, very unique character in this game. As we can see here, the technique that I talked about earlier, boop, instantly dead. This is so good, it's so good. Simulate universe, who cares, who cares. But another thing I want to talk about is this team building in general. And of course, I do not have an Acheron. Acheron's not out. What do you mean? Right? But, well, let's say Arland is Acheron. And the general idea of how you're going to want to construct Acheron teams are on having multiple Nihilty characters. Like, you have the sample team here. This is Silverwolf, Pela, Arland. Ideally, you would want a character like Aventurine, or a character maybe like March 7th or Fire MC that can apply different sources of debuffs. But a character like Xueyi can actually get use as well because of a very unique light cone. And no, it's not this one. Ignore that I had this one there. I moved light cones. But because of the trend of the universal market, and why trend of the universal market is important to making preservation characters is generally better for Acheron, is when you are hit from the enemy turn, you apply a burn. And thanks to the information we got that enemies exploding also applies, the light cone of trend of the universal market and its burn application will also apply, meaning that Acheron has a lot of synergy with characters that, you know, normally wouldn't, because Xueyi doesn't apply any debuffs in her kit outside of her break, so there isn't really much way to get value out of Xueyi otherwise. But because Xueyi, this has trend of the universal market, also now you are getting that value, and because there's only slightly more limited elemental types, you can use Silverwolf's E and perchance apply the lightning weakness onto an enemy for Acheron as well, and you can also apply all type res, and that makes for a very, very good combination. But in general, the tanks idea you would want to run this with and trend of the universal market is actually beneficial for a few different ones as well. As if you didn't know, March 7th has an ultimate that applies a frozen, and frozen also counts as a debuff, making March 7th a very, very good target to run trend of the universal market. And March 7th skill, you can use it on herself and then have March 7th get targeted more likely and have additional taunt value, allowing your trend to be procced. And for a similar reason, Fire MC is another tank that is very, very good with Acheron, as they both have debuffs and have a likelihood to get targeted, be buffed thanks to their skills. And there's also the character we get later for the abundance path, because you'll notice a lot of abundance characters like our Lynx, our Bailus, they don't really apply debuffs, but the new 4-star we're getting on Acheron's banner, Gallagher, does. I don't know if we'll do a separate video on Gallagher himself, but Gallagher basically applies break and has like a lot of like debuffs that he applies, and acts as kind of this weirdly attacking healer. So it's very unique as well. And then we also get the tank in Aventurine, who applies crit damage taking down buffs. Though Aventurine, of course, does not have a unique taunt, so it can be a little bit harder to actually proc trend. But Preservation, of course, has an inherent taunt value that's higher, so you'll get additional procs of trend regardless. And now to talk about another concept I want to just mention a little bit. With a character like Pela, even though the basic doesn't normally apply a debuff, right? Like, you're not applying a debuff with the basic, you apply with a skill. If you use a light cone like Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat, or you use the light cone like I showed you earlier, the Silver Wolf signature, this will allow you to get more debuffs on for an Acheron that isn't thus using Pela's skill. Because you'll notice, as well as they said in the video, that Acheron's skill applies more stacks. So you want Acheron to be skilling basically like every time you can, so you can get your ultimate up sooner. So having a light cone like Resolution Shines as Pearls of Sweat on your Nihilty character is very important to allow Acheron to get her debuffs. And to talk about some other concepts, thanks to some how debuff application works, a character like Kafka, which I do not have on this account, Kafka is another character that you could run with like Black Swan, and you could actually put Acheron in a DOT team as this like kind of her own character, as Black Swan applies a lot of debuffs and applies preemptive debuffs thanks to her technique upon entering battle. But Kafka also gets value off of her follow-up attack, because her follow-up attack can apply a lightning debuff, a lightning DOT. Your Acheron will get another stack, making Acheron technically able to run on a DOT team as her own like independent damage source. I personally don't like this idea, but please don't run it, but it is an idea that you can do if you just want the mommy team, right? Black Swan and Acheron just dancing together, and Black Swan as well, even outside of DOT, you could use Black Swan here to replace Silver Wolf, or you could use Black Swan here to replace Pela, and that will be very valuable for Acheron as well. So that is something worth keeping in mind. And another concept I want to go over a little bit is I will mention harmony characters, right? If you know Acheron herself applies stacks, why don't I just use a character like Sparkle to make Acheron apply stacks as well? And I think there's going to be some limitations on this, that this doesn't allow us to abuse this as much, whereas we just have Acheron just get some kind of buff by having Nihilty's characters that maybe will kind of lower the value of harmony a bit. But even if this does exist in theory, is we could use a character like Welt, right? Welt acting as this kind of pseudo sustain to a sense, as you can use Welt ultimate to imprison, and this prevents damage taken. And because of that, you still get the debuff, and then you can still use Acheron here, and then you can also have Sparkle. Sparkle buffs the crit damage of Acheron, the crit ratio of Acheron, and all of a sudden you have everything you want, and you can still take advantage of harmony characters, right? So that is another thing important to keep in mind. And there are a few relic sets I want to talk about immediately here, and those are as follows. With the relic side of things, we have the 4-piece wind set. I bet you didn't expect me to talk about this, and this is not for Acheron herself, but because of how Acheron applies stacks, it applies stacks of your ally turns as well when they apply debuffs. If you run 4-piece wind on a character like Pela, you run 4-piece wind on a character like Silverwolf, you run 4-piece wind on your tank like March 7th or Fire MC, this is actually a very interesting idea, as you'll get more actions, and these more actions mean your Acheron gets more debuffs, and when you get more debuffs, you get more ultimates. And because of these things together, this stacking as many 4-piece win sets together with all your other Nihilty characters allows Acheron to get so many more ultimates that this set is basically a must farm for you if you just want to maximize the value you get out of Acheron. in a weird way. It's honestly more important than the DPS set that's having a lot of eagle and having a lot of speed, so you can use advance forward, get more actions, and Acheron can start running sets like attack boots. I think a problem with how Acheron is right now is you're kind of incentivized into running speed boots. If you're running a normal like rotation, you aren't running eagle as much, because Acheron herself applies these stacks, so you kind of want Acheron to go fast too, so your Acheron can like apply more stacks as well. But if you're cheating out turns from your other Nihilty characters, you can actually get advantage off of running sets like eagle. You get advantage off of running sets like Von Whack in the simulated universe. But for Acheron's main set, I have like 2 recommendations. First of all, Pioneer Diver of Dead Waters. I expect this set to be this generally insane on Acheron. You get a lot of crit rate, you get a lot of crit damage. This fantastic value in general. So expect that set to be very good. And this will be her go-to set in general. But there's another option as well. And if you notice, having a lot of Nihilty characters means you have a lot of defense down. You know the set that applies defense down? Genius of Brilliant Stars. So you get 10% extra defense ignore, and then if your Silver Wolf applies Quantum Weakness, you get an extra 10% defense ignore. And because of how these Nihilty teams work, Genius of Brilliant Stars actually becomes a very solid option, especially if Acheron has even more defense ignore in her kit, which we'll have to see on that part. And I'll say right away, we do have some traces that you can farm with the double up event. You can just go ahead and farm the Heaven Incinerator, which I've started a little bit. I kind of got unlucky on purples, but I've started farming this myself, and this would be what I recommend farming quite a bit on this, so you can have your traces maxed out on launch, and this would be a very good target to go on as of now. Unfortunately though, we're going to have to wait on the Stagnant Shadows. I think they will just give us something different. As you can see here, we got ice, we got quantum, so you know. But yeah, that's it for this one. Oh yeah, I do want to talk about the last thing first, the simulated universe. As I said, Von Whack, this is bad Talia. I don't like Talia, but Von Whack is so valuable for Acheron for the same reason 4-piece Wind is on supports. Like, it's not good for Acheron herself, but that's having your Nihilty characters around Acheron run this set is immensely valuable for the energy regenerate, and it's immensely valuable for the advance forward, so you can get more actions on your other characters, form more stacks. Then for Acheron herself, you are going to want to wait for the ideal planar set, as we got a new set announced that provides 12% crit rate when you have 2 Nihilty teams, 2 Nihilty characters on your team with World 9. But if you want a set that you could farm now, it's inert Self Auto. And the reason for this is simple. Acheron has a big ultimate. This buffs ultimate damage. I know. I don't like farming this set either. But it's good. It's good. And unfortunately, because of how Acheron works and how hard it's probably going to be to get speed on her, Glamoth is not going to be ideal. Glamoth is not really going to be ideal. I think in general we're probably going to run on like attack boots and then have our Nihilty characters just run sets like Sprightly Von Whack to get more value. Though I imagine speed boots could be decent on her as well. But if you're running this set with speed boots, then you just run the new set that applies 12% crit rate, right? Because like the damage buff is not going to be as like big of a deal compared to like the 12% crit rate gain. So these are my current takes on Acheron right now. Well, I don't know how much of this will end up holding merit, and there will be guide videos by other people at the launch, but I think that is a good stopping point. Let me know what you think about Acheron, if there's like any other recommendations you would make for people playing Acheron in advance, or any thoughts you have on Acheron's character in general. And that's all for me. Goodbye.